I knew her grandmother's funeral was that morning, but I had a packed schedule at work. Meetings with students and colleagues, an evening program to plan, and a board agenda to write. The funeral was all the way in South San Francisco at 11 a.m. If I went, I'd have to reschedule a whole day. So I headed to my office, but just a few minutes into my drive, I felt a queasiness in my stomach. A mile further, this uneasiness had prompted me to call my mom, find out she was feeling similarly, and make a plan to meet her in Oakland. She too was a friend of the family and also felt that tug. As I waited, I realized I had accidentally, on purpose I suppose, worn black that day. At the gates of the cemetery, I wondered if I had made the right decision. I had only met her grandmother a handful of times before. As we walked towards the huddled groups of mourners, our steps hesitant, my friend and her mom saw us. She ran over, enveloped us in hugs, and through tears said, "Thank you so much for being here." We hugged tightly, and I gave them as much love and sympathy as I could in that one embrace. That day, I listened to my gut, to the sense in my body that there was something I had to do. There was nothing I could do to change the situation. But after experiencing her mother's response and genuine, intense gratitude, I realized that sometimes just showing up is the least but the best thing we can do. This experience taught me to never underestimate the value of being there for someone in a time of need. On that day, I answered, Hineini. Hineini means here I am. The word itself is a combination of the word hine, meaning here, and ani, meaning I. It appears many times throughout the Hebrew Bible and is uttered by many of our most well-known biblical characters, by Adam, by Moses, by Abraham. Hineini, here I am. Just from a semantic standpoint, it seems pretty simple, doesn't it? It could be the answer I give when I see a friend across the room, when my host picks me up from the airport, when a professor takes attendance. But really, Hineini in its biblical context is not simply a question of physical location. It goes much deeper than that. Hineini means being here, being really here. Physically, yes, but also emotionally, spiritually, and mindfully, to whatever and whoever is asking and needing you to be present. Again, this does not seem like the hardest thing to accomplish. I claim to do it all the time. We talk to one another on the phone, we chat at the oneg, we say, "How are you?" when we pass someone in the grocery store. Yet how often do we truly live Hineini in our lives? Do you remember the last time you experienced the absolute complete attention and attentiveness of another person? Or when you provided that for someone else? We have all experienced what I'm calling a half Hineini. A time when we heard the keyboard clicks as we were on the phone with a friend expressing our concern, or a time when someone glanced at their cell phone while we were having lunch. Those half Hineinis feel so different and feel like very different encounters than we know or feel that our conversation partner is with us 100%. Abraham utters Hineini multiple times in the Torah portion we just read. The challenging nature of the Akedah, Abraham's almost sacrifice of Isaac, is heightened and revealed through these Hineinis. Abraham speaks this word first to God, then to his son Isaac, and then to an angel who is a messenger of God. Each Hineini represents something different, a different obligation in his life, a different emotion, a different call, even though the answer is the same. Here's a brief background for the story. Abraham, the first Jew, and his wife Sarah are both approaching 100 years old. Though God has promised Abraham to make of him a great nation and make his offspring as numerous as the stars, he and his wife are still childless. Since Abraham has a fair amount of land and property tied up in this promise to God, he is understandably a little concerned about finding an heir. God finally sends messengers with the promise that Sarah will have a son. Given that she is 90 years old, she understandably laughs in skeptical response. Yet the prophecy comes true and Isaac is born. As you may imagine, Abraham and Sarah are overjoyed to have this son, whose miraculous presence deepens their commitment to and connection with God. So back to the Hineinis. The first one appears right away in the text that we just chanted. God calls out to Abraham, and he immediately replies, Hineini, here I am. Abraham is ready to answer the call. Had he been waiting? Did he anticipate this request? Such a quick and eager response indicates he is truly present and ready for whatever God asks of him, even being willing to sacrifice his son in order to show his devotion. Though Abraham has questioned and bargained with God in the past, in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, this time he readily accepts this very challenging request. And God's specificity, as I mentioned, is so interesting here. It's almost as if maybe God doesn't want Abraham to question, or maybe he just knows that Abraham will know what to do. This unusual detailing in the text itself ensures there's no question for Abraham. He must do this, and he must sacrifice Isaac. Nonetheless, as horrible as it sounds to us in our modern context, Abraham's Hineini is resolute and clear. He immediately prepares himself for the journey, collects his son, and sets out. If Sarah cried, there is no record. If Abraham protested, it was only in his heart. And even if we may recoil at his actions after this point, Abraham shows true commitment here. This type of commitment is challenging, especially in our lives today. Our attention is pulled in a million different directions at any given moment, and it's really easy to miss something. On my first day of rabbinical school, a rabbi shared this story with us. He described a time that he was attempting to cross Wilshire Boulevard. And for any of you familiar with Los Angeles, that is really scary. It's a huge street. He also had his 2 young children in tow. So as the red hand began to flash and the seconds ticked down, he doubled his focus on his children, making sure they were moving quickly enough, not running into traffic, and holding onto his hands. At the same time, he saw a congregant pass, had a very brief conversation with her, and then continued to the other side of the street. You're, always on. About 6 months later, he was officiating a Shiva minyan for this same congregant, after the death of her mother. Sometime that evening, this congregant approached him, thanked him for the Shiva minyan, and said, "You probably noticed I didn't ask you to officiate the funeral." The rabbi had noticed, but he didn't think too much of it. There were other rabbis at his synagogue. But the woman continued, "I didn't ask you because I have been so hurt by you for the past 6 months." As it turns out, that brief conversation in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard had been the moment when this woman shared that her mother had gone back into the hospital and the prognosis didn't look good. The rabbi never called, never visited, and understandably, this hurt her deeply. With context, we can understand why the rabbi didn't remember this brief encounter, but his inaction had large consequences for this family and their relationship with the rabbi and their congregation. As a father, this man did everything right as he ensured the safety of his children. Yet, as a rabbi, he let a congregant down. We all have stories like this, times when our energy is elsewhere and we miss a critical call, a cry for help or support from someone that we love. Often we can remedy this misconnection, but sometimes, unfortunately, we cannot. But with such busy lives, how do we even hear the call? Hear the voices of our friends, families, or even our own hearts? Can we prepare ourselves for our Hineini moments? I believe divine commands comes to us with that queasy feeling in our stomach. We know what is right, but we want the easy way out. We all know that nagging feeling we get when we just know it's time to make a change. Time to finally pick up the phone and return that challenging call to a friend or relative, apologize or grant forgiveness, or let go of that grudge we've been holding for too long. This is our Hineini moment. This is us choosing to be present, even if it is just for one aspect of our hectic lives. Abraham answered the call without hesitation because he lived a Hineini life day in and day out. He was ready, used to, and waiting for God's call. We don't expect God to talk to us in the same way. So when something comes more subtly or comes couched in other language that does not scream, I need to talk with you right now, how do we prepare ourselves to be ready and to listen? Rosh Hashanah is a great time to resolve to say yes more, to listen more, to help out more. It is up to us to also listen to ourselves, to listen to that inner voice that calls to us when we are truly needed. This is our test, the times we must say, Hineini. So the second Hineini in Abraham's story comes 3 days after the first. He and Isaac have been walking together for a while and are currently in total silence, though we can assume their minds are full of unspoken words. Is Abraham still feeling his commitment, or does he have doubts or concerns with his upcoming sacrifice? Is he worried about himself, his son, his wife, God? And what about Isaac? Is he unsure, scared, confused, or steadfast? While we will never know their true thoughts, Isaac eventually grows tired of this silence and calls out to his father, Avi, my father. And to his son, Abraham replies again, Hineini, here I am. And this time add, Beni, my son. So much lies behind these tiny words. This personalization may have provided him with comfort. And maybe what Abraham was trying to say was, I'm here. I care about you. I may have to make this difficult choice, and I don't have the answers because God is in control, but I love you. This second Hineini is incredibly complex and challenging, yet also so real. This Hineini comes from a loving heart, but is wrought with human uncertainty and doubt. We want to always be there for our loved ones, but we have our own challenges in mind. We want to save the day, but we do not have all the answers. I'm not a parent, but I can imagine this feeling rings very true for people in that position a lot. I can name countless times when I express extreme stress and frustration, and when my parents ask what they can do, my genuine answer is nothing. I know this tears at them. I know they want to fix it. All they want is for me to be happy. Yet in these moments, what they can provide me with is love, care, and support. And really, that's all I need. Even though it doesn't fix the situation, it helps, and it shows that they are there for me. I feel a similar feeling when someone I care about is going through a challenging time, a breakup, a crisis of confidence, the loss of a loved one. It's frustrating to feel so helpless, but often just showing up, just being there, is actually what can mean the most. We should not and cannot undervalue or forget the importance of our physical presence, or our call or Skype or text. At these times, Hineini actually does have a very physical quality. The challenge is saying yes and being present in these moments. Should I attend the Shiva Minyan of a congregant I never met? Should I answer the phone call even though I know it will be a very long conversation? Someone once said, if you are too busy to be kind, you are too busy. More often than not, if we're asking ourselves this question, we know the answer. The answer is Hineini. I am here. I will be there for you. You matter to me, my son, my daughter, my parent, my friend, my congregant. So we encounter Abraham's final Hineini at the apex of the drama. He is standing over his beloved son Isaac with his knife in his hand, fully committed to his task. Right or wrong, he has made his choice. So there he is, hand outstretched, knife in the air, when he is called again. He hears a voice shout, Avraham, Avraham. This time, a messenger, an angel of God, breaks through his concentration. Again, Abraham answers, Hineini, here I am. Again, our text does not elucidate his emotion, but I imagine Abraham literally physically shaking himself back to this moment, back to the present. Somehow, in his intensity, he is able to hear this voice and stops himself. The angel tells him that he has proven his devotion to God, and Abraham completes the offering with a ram instead of his son. The angel tells him to stop, to hold back. This is not the right path. The test is over. And I know I always, and many of us, breathe a sigh of relief. So many of us have also found ourselves in situations like this. We are so singularly focused and committed to a direction that we have blocked out all other thoughts, ideas, and distractions. I can think of certain arguments, particularly with those closest to me, when I am so intent on winning the argument and being right, that I bring in all sorts of ridiculous examples from 10 years ago that are unrelated but filled with passion of the moment. Abraham teaches us here to, yes, act with intensity, but never get so focused that we can't remain alert, open, and able to hear the voice of reason that can bring us back from the brink. Our rabbinic ancestors teach us that his name is repeated twice because that's what it takes. When we are so focused and engaged, we often don't hear the voice the first time. And the angel knew that. The angel knew that even Abraham needed to be called twice to heed the call this time. And luckily for us too, his ability to stop himself leads to the elimination of child sacrifice from our tradition, which we are all thankful for today. So each of these Hineinis represent a true aspect of the human spirit, and we are all each of these Abrahams at different points in our lives. Sometimes we are truly present. Sometimes we are distracted but try to be there, and other times we need a shocking call to come back to ourselves and what is right there in front of us. However, when there is so much else demanding our attention, we have to work to put ourselves in the mindset of being Hineini, to ourselves, to others, and to God. Rosh Hashanah is the day to make this resolution, to resolve to be Hineini, Hayom, this day of all the days, we begin again. We get the opportunity to start over and push ourselves to be better. The bigger question is, though, when the call comes, would we hear the voice? What does it mean today to hear the voice of God? However you define God, and whether you define it as something personal or that still small voice we call our conscience, or through the voices and needs of others in our lives, how do we push ourselves to actually answer? For starters, we don't have to be the Hineini of the story's beginning all the time. We aren't always ready to jump in and accept whatever task is laid in front of us. We can and should ask ourselves questions. Am I ready to take this on? Will I sacrifice self-care to accomplish this task? However, we must also remember that every little bit helps, and often what we can give is enough. Practicing and living Hineini means leaving our phones at home when we take our kids to the park, turning off work email on the weekends, or committing to calling that friend we have lost touch with once a week to rebuild that relationship. This year, let us participate in conscious self-reflection, motivation assessment, and teshuvah, repentance, to figure out where we can be more Hineini with ourselves. Figure out how to listen to that still small voice, coming from within or without, that pushes us in a new direction, even when it's scary or challenging. If you can believe it, there's actually a fourth Hineini in this story. It's often forgotten about and overlooked, and only after being encouraged to go back to the text by a teacher did I find it myself. After Abraham has sacrificed the ram, the angel calls out to him one more time. This time, instead of preaching about Abraham's fidelity, the angel offers these words of God. Ki varech avarechecha, that in blessing I will bless you. After this entire ordeal, God offers Abraham a blessing and speaks again of the promise that God will make of Abraham a great nation, as numerous as the stars. This can be the impact of Hineini, the ripple effect. When we are present for one another and ourselves, there is no telling what we can do. Let us be brave and stand up in support of causes we care about, against injustices in the world and in our own communities. Let's also stand up for ourselves. We can be blessings for one another and our personal self. Blessings of support, of love, care, friendship, ownership, and compassion. This year, when the question is asked and we feel the call, may we be ready. May we truly answer Hineini. Shana Tova.